Hi friends, today we're going to discuss about the issue between Israel and Palestine.
Disturbing video taken by the attackers themselves as they rampaged through Israeli homes, killing on sight and then being killed.
The Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an unprecedented assault on Israel with hundreds of gunmen infiltrating communities near the Gaza Strip. And what was before Israel in 1948 and what was the Balfour Declaration? Britain took control of the area known as Palestine after the ruler of the part of the Middle East and the Ottoman Empire was defeated in the World War I. The land was inhabited by the Jewish military and the Arab majority, as well as other smaller ethnic groups. Tensions between the two peoples grew when the international community gave the UK the task of establishing the national home in Palestine for Jewish people. This stemmed from the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a pledge made by the Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to British Jewish community. The declaration was enshrined in the British mandate over Palestine and endorsed by the newly created League of Nations, forerunner of the United Nations in 1922. To Jews, Palestine was their ancestral home, but Palestinian Arabs also claimed the land and opposed the move. Between the 1920s and 1940s, the numbers of Jews arriving there grew, with many fleeing from the persecutions in Europe, especially the Nazis' Holocaust in World War II. Violence between Jews and Arabs and against the British rule also increased. In 1947, the UN voted for Palestine to be split into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem becoming an international city. That plan was accepted by the Jewish leaders but rejected by the Arab side and never implemented. And now let me see how and why was Israel created. In 1948, unable to solve the problem, Britain withdrew and Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel. It was intended to serve as a safe haven for Jews fleeing persecution as well as the nation homeland for Jews. Fighting between Jewish and Arab militants had been intensifying for months, and the day after Israel declared statehood, 5 Arab countries attacked. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were forced out of their homes in what they call Al-Nakba. By the time the fighting ended in a ceasefire, the following year, Israel controlled most of the territory. Jordan occupied the land, which became known as the West Bank, and Egypt occupied Gaza. Jerusalem was divided between Israeli forces in west and Jordanian forces in the east. Because there was never a peace agreement, there were more wars and fighting in the following decades. Israel map today. In a war in 1967, Israel occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, as well as the most of the Syrian Golan Heights, Gaza, and the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. Most of the Palestinian refugees and their descendants live in Gaza and the West Bank, as well as in the neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Neither they nor their descendants have been allowed by Israel to return their homes. Israel says this would overwhelm the country and threaten its existence as a Jewish state. Israel still occupies the West Bank and claims the whole of Jerusalem as its capital, while the Palestinians claim East Jerusalem as the capital of a hoped for future Palestinian state. The US is one of the only handful of countries to recognize the city as Israel's capital. In past 50 years, Israel has built settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where more than 7 lakh Jews now live. Settlements are held to be illegal under the international law. That is the position of the UN Security Council and the UK government, among others, although Israel rejects this. And now, let me see what is the Gaza Strip. Gaza is a narrow strip of land sandwiched between Israel and the Mediterranean Sea, but with a short southern border with Egypt. Just 41 kilometers long and 10 kilometers wide, it has more than 2 million inhabitants and is one of the most densely populated places on the earth. In the wake of the 1948 to 1949 war, Gaza was occupied by Egypt for 19 years. Israel occupied Gaza in the 1967 war and stayed until 2005. During that time, building Jewish settlements, Israel withdrew its troops and settlers in 2005. And now, let me see what are the main problems between Israelis and Palestinians. There are a number of issues which the two sides cannot agree on. That includes what should happen to the Palestinian refugees, whether Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank should stay or be removed, whether two sides should share Jerusalem, and perhaps most tricky of all, whether a Palestinian state should be created alongside of Israel. And what are the efforts have been made to resolve these problems? Israel-Palestinian peace talks were held on and off between 1990s and 2010s, interspersed with outbreaks of violence. A negotiated peace did seem possible in the early days. A series of secret talks in Norway became the Oslo peace process, forever symbolized by a ceremony on the White House lawn in 1993, presided over by the President Bill Clinton. In a historic moment, the Palestinians recognized the state of Israel and the Israel recognized its historical enemy, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, as the sole representative of the Palestinian people. A self-governing Palestinian authority was set up. Cracks soon appeared, though with then opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu calling Oslo a mortal threat to the Israel. Israel's accelerated their project to settle Jews in the occupied Palestinian territories. The recent emerged Palestinian militant group Hamas sent suicide bombers to kill the people in Israel and wreck the chances of a deal. The atmosphere in Israel turned ugly, culminating in Israeli Prime Minister Rabin's assassination by Jewish extremists on 4th November 1995. In the 2000s, attempts were made to revive the peace process, including in 2003, when a roadmap was devised by world powers with the ultimate goal of two-state solution. But this was never implemented. Peace efforts finally stalled in 2014, when talks failed between Israelis and Palestinians in Washington. The most recent peace plan prepared by the United States by Donald Trump was called the Deal of the Century by the Prime Minister Netanyahu, but was dismissed by the Palestinians as one-sided and never got off the ground. And let me see, why are Israel and Gaza at war now? Gaza is ruled by the Hamas, an Islamist militant group that is committed to the destruction of the Israel and is designated as the terrorist group by the UK and many other powers of the world. Hamas won the Palestinians' last elections in 2006 and seized control over the Gaza the following year by ousting the rebel Fatah movement of the West Bank-based President Mahmoud Abbas. Since then, militants in Gaza have found several wars with Israel, which along with Egypt has maintained a partial blockade on the strip to isolate Hamas and try to stop attacks, particularly the indiscriminate firing of rockets towards Israeli cities. Palestinians in Gaza say Israel's restrictions and its airstrikes on heavily populated areas amount to collectively punishment. This year has been the deadliest year on the record for Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and the East Jerusalem. They also complain of the restrictions and the military actions being carried out there in the response to the deadly attacks on Israelis. These tensions could have been one of the reasons for the Hamas' latest attack. But the militants may also have been seeking to boost their popularity among the ordinary Palestinians, including by the hostages to pressure Israel to free some of the estimated 4,500 Palestinians held in prisons. And let me see who supports Israel in the current conflict and who does not. The US, the European Union, and the other Western countries have all commended the Hamas attack on Israel. The US, Israel's closest ally, has all over the years given by the Jewish state more than $260 billion in military and economic aid and is promising additional equipment and ammunition. It also said it was sending an aircraft carrier, other ships, jet to the East Mediterranean. Russia and China have both refused to condemn Hamas and say they are maintaining the contact with both sides in the conflict. Russian President Vladimir Putin has blamed US policy for the absence of peace in the Middle East. And however, friends, the wars could not be the answer for any kind of questions. By these wars, only the common public people is going to get affected. So we kindly ask both of them to make a peace agreement between them and make this world more peaceful. And tell me, friends, what do you think about this attacks by the both of the countries? And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel.